So today's class, we are looking at topic 9, which is geologic time. All right, we talked about principle of superposition a little bit. When we were talking about fossils, we talked about the principle of superposition. So in undisturbed layers of rock, the oldest layers will be on the bottom and the youngest layers will be on top. Okay, so that's a geological theory. The strata, those are the layers of sedimentary rock. So sediments deposited at the bottom of bodies of water, they will eventually form sedimentary rocks, and then additional new layers of sediment continue to form over the previous layers. So unless something happens to move these layers, they will stay in their original positions. So just keep in mind that strata is the term used for these sedimentary layers. So that principle of superposition can be used by geologists to determine the relative ages of the layers of rock, because the top layer is the youngest, the bottom layer is the oldest. Relative dating, so determining the order in which geological events occurred and the relative age of rocks by looking at their positions in rock layers. So scientists can determine the relative age of rocks by examining their position in the strata or in the layers. Keep in mind, if a crack or a fault runs through a layer, that means it must have happened after the layer was in place. So therefore, the rock is older than the fault or crack. An index fossil, it's a type of fossil that can be used to determine the age of the material in which it is found. So some fossils can be used to determine the age of the layer of rock in which they are found. So if the creature that became fossilized was on Earth for only a short period of time and it was widespread, it can give accurate information about the age of the rock in which it is found. Clues from technology, there's something called half-life. This is the amount of time that a given amount of radioactive substance takes to be reduced by 1/2. So the amounts of certain elements in a rock can tell geologists a great deal about that rock's age. So over billions of years, some elements can change into other elements. So for example, uranium. So over a period of 4.5 billion years, half of the uranium in a rock will turn into lead. The lead will then undergo no further change. So that time period is called the half-life of uranium. So the uranium would be called the parent element. Once half of the parent element has changed, only half of the remaining element continues to change over a similar period of time. So that means in another 4.5 billion years, half of the remaining uranium will change into lead. And then this process will continue until such a small amount of uranium remains, it may not even be measurable. So that's half-life. So here we can see parent material, half and half. After each half-life, only 1/2 of the parent material remains, and eventually almost all of the parent material will be gone. Okay, so this is 1 half-life, and then 2 half-lives, and so on. So the blue represents the parent material, so for example, uranium, and then the purple represents the daughter material, which would be, for example, the lead. Radiocarbon dating, it's a method used to determine the age of organic remains by measuring the relative amount of radioactive carbon found in the remains. So this process, it uses carbon-14, it's a rare form of carbon, as its parent material. And then this method is used to find the age of fossils and bones and wood that are up to 50,000 years old. After 50,000 years, the amount of carbon-14 that's left in the sample, it's too small to measure. So all living things take in carbon-14 out of the environment to build cells and tissues. When they die, the carbon-14, it'll change into nitrogen gas, in a half-life of 5,730 years. And then scientists can measure the amount of carbon-14 that's left in the tissue to determine the age of the remains. So that's radiocarbon dating. So next we'll look at geologic time scale. So in this figure, we can see the Precambrian era, 4,600 to 600 million years ago. This is the formation of Earth. First simple organisms appeared, bacteria, and the first soft-bodied animals that had no vertebrae. Paleozoic era. Next, 600 to 225 millions of years ago, we see the first reptiles. We see the first large land animals, like amphibians and frogs. We see first insects, the first large land plants, first fish with jaws. Then we get to the Mesozoic era, 225 to 65 millions of years ago. This is where the dinosaurs were ruling and then they became extinct. First flowering plants, first birds and mammals. And here we have the Cenozoic era, 65 millions of years ago to present day. Appearance of most of the modern species, many more species of mammals, first grasses, and first human-like species, about 2 to 3 million years ago. So the geologic timescale, it's a division of Earth's history into smaller units based on the appearances of different life forms. So Earth formed 4.5 billion years ago. Some of the divisions here, eons, these are the largest division of time on the geological scale. And then those eons are divided into eras, and then eras are divided into periods. So era, this is one of the 4 longest subdivisions in the history of Earth. And then the period, it's a subdivision of an era. I had a quick diagram to just show that. So here's the eras, Precambrian, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, Cenozoic. Then we could see periods here, Cambrian and so on, Jurassic, Cretaceous, and so on. So just to clarify, these were the 4 eras of Earth's history. All right, so Precambrian era, that was the first of the 4 eras, the first 4 billion years, very little fossil evidence. Scientists think that the earliest supercontinent, Rodinia, formed during this time, about 1.1 billion years ago, and then Rodinia split apart 750 million years ago, forming the ocean basins. There is evidence that simple forms of life like bacteria, algae, fungi, and worms lived on Earth during the Precambrian. But because the bodies of these creatures were soft, they left very little fossil evidence. Paleozoic era, that was the second era. It's also called ancient life. First plants and animals appeared. The Mesozoic era is the third era, middle life. This is where dinosaurs were the dominant life form on Earth. The Cenozoic era, the fourth and current era, recent life, the era in which humans evolved. All right, so this just shows again the eras and then how it can be split into periods. This is showing Laurasia and Gondwanaland. So present-day North America was once part of Laurasia. The split into Laurasia and Gondwanaland was the first breakup of Pangaea. So if you recall Pangaea, it was the name of the second supercontinent that is thought to have existed approximately 350 million years ago. So Pangaea included all the present continents. It came together during the Paleozoic era, about 350 million years ago, and then it broke up about 180 million years ago during the Mesozoic era. So during the Jurassic period, that's when the dinosaurs dominated Earth. That was 200 million years ago during the Mesozoic era. So fossil evidence indicates that Pangaea first split into a northern portion called Laurasia and then a southern portion called Gondwanaland. All right, so I'm going to pause here.